Hi guys, it's Kales, and I want to talk to you about my favorite books that I read in 2018. I know that 2018 is like way over and we're a month into 2019, but whatever, I don't care. I'm gonna tell you about some of my favorite books that I liked. I think there's like 10 on this list. I don't know, I just tried to think about all the books that I loved that year, and we're just gonna go with it. And yeah, here are some of my favorite books I read in 2018. Cool. In case you're curious, I read 124 books in 2018, woot, and only 12 graphic novels or poetry anthologies. I minus those because, like, some people in my life read 300 books a year and then they count picture books, and I'm like, oh, come on. But it's just a counting thing. So if you're curious, the 124 books equated out to about, I think, 50,000 pages. Let me check that. I totally overshot myself there. It was about 43,000 pages is what I read this year. The oldest book that I read this year was Mindhunter, which was from 1995. The longest book I read this year was Tower of Dawn at 672 pages. The shortest book I read this year was Lord of the Butterflies by Andrea Gibson, which was 94 pages. My best reading month was July, where I read 16 books. My worst reading month was April, where I only read 4. The book that took me the longest to read was Gentlemen of Moscow, and that took me 29 days. It took me on an average 5.96 days to finish a book, and the average length of the books that I read was about 396 pages. 73% of the books that I read were by females this year. About 75% of the books that I read were written by white authors. However, each month I managed to read at least one, if not more, books by authors of color. The majority of the books that I read came out in 2018, and my genres were all over the board. Basically, YA was the majority, but there's a lot of colors on that chart. The majority of the time I read the actual physical book. I was about 60% of the time. Most books that I read, I gave 4 stars, which I think is awesome. That's great. That means I liked the majority of the books that I read this year. 56% of the books that I read were diverse books containing main characters different from myself, or that of a different nationality, different life perspective, and yeah, that was pretty cool. And finally, the majority of the books that I read were books that I own, bought, but again, that was pretty even across the board, whether it was an ARC, a book I owned, a book I didn't own or didn't want to buy. Anyway, those were all my stats for 2018. Here are the actual books that I really enjoyed, like I promised in the title of this video, but whatever. First off, two of my favorite books were Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and I was forced to read Six of Crows from my friend Allison, who does my podcast with me, Novel Predictions, and in the month of January of 2018, we controlled each other's reading lists, and this was one of my favorite books. I ended up giving both of them a 5 out of 5 stars. Loved them. They're amazing. I'm so excited because Leigh Bardugo is coming to the bookstore February 3rd, and she sold out, and it's amazing, and I just can't wait to meet her. And my voice cracked. I did already meet her once at BEA, and she was amazing and so nice and so kind, and I just can't wait to be there for an event with her. I sound like a mouse, but that's fine. 2 books that I read in March that I absolutely loved was OBSIDIO by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which I realize now I released the YA Bookstube Awards video, and I said I hadn't read any of the winners, and that's a lie. I've read OBSIDIO. That's the one I've read, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was an epic conclusion to this epic trilogy, and it was awesome and amazing and just so great. The second book that I read in March that ended up being one of my favorites was Children of Blood and Bone, because holy crap, who doesn't like Children of Blood and Bone? I mean, it became Jimmy Fallon's, it was Jimmy Fallon's summer book of the month thing, book club, whatever, that he did. That's really cool. So I'm really excited for the second one. God, what a debut, man. What a debut. It was so good. So good. Yeah. And then in June, I read the book The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz, and holy crap, talk about a book that is right up my alley. It is a mystery with a guy who writes from Sherlock Holmes. It's metafiction, it's about a writer, and there's like meta stuff in there talking to the reader and movie stuff, and just, it's so good. This is one of those ones that, like, I just remember and I get so excited about. Anthony Horowitz is amazing, and I love this book. I love this book so much. I need to buy it in hardcover. I have an ARC of it, but I need to buy it in hardcover, man. It's so good. I loved The Word is Murder. Really, oh God. This is just like a gushing video, and I'm sorry, not sorry. Then I have to talk about one of my favorite and most underrated YA books ever, in the history of ever, and so help me God, I want to get everyone to read this book. It's called Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry, and I love this book, okay? Real quick, this is a book about a kid who's an atheist who gets sent to Catholic school, and he meets a girl who starts, like, calling out the nun on history and stuff like that, and he's like, oh my god, she's someone I can relate to, she's probably like me, an atheist. No, turns out she's a devout Catholic who wants to be the first female priest. And then she leads him into this group of heretics. Anonymous is what they call themselves, and there's a Wiccan, a gay Jewish kid, a kid on the autism spectrum, the girl priest, and then this atheist, and they go around their school, and they start being like evangelists for all different types of thinking, and it's so good! It's so good, and it's so funny. I can't tell you how many times I laughed during this book, and this book, guys, really, like, please pick this up. She's a playwright, debut author, nobody knew about it. I want you to read this book. It's so good. And her next book is coming out in 2019, and I'm so excited for it. And but this one, guys, this one, so good. Okay, and then this one I'm only going to talk about briefly because I plan on doing an ARC review for it later. It actually comes out in March of 2019. It's called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's like I, Tanya, and Almost Famous had a baby, and it's incredible and amazing, and it's told in like documentary format, and like I said, I'm going to do a whole review of it later, but just know that this is coming out in March 2019, and you should read it, and it's awesome, and just good. And isn't that a beautiful cover? Like, holy crap. Another book that's coming out in 2019, and I did a full review of it, is Here and Now and Then, so I'm not going to go into that, but again, I loved it. It comes out January 22nd, and it's so good, and yeah, that one, cool. The next two books that I loved were nonfiction, and one was Mindhunter, and I mentioned that of being the oldest one, and this book, okay, I've loved Criminal Minds for a really long time. I have a weird obsession with true crime. I think it's amazing and so good to read. Why had I never picked up this book before? It is rough. I will tell you, it is rough. For those of you with like so many trigger warnings, because he goes into details of all these case files, of all these serial killers, but it's so interesting and so fascinating, and I love the way that he wrote it, and I'm sorry, but the narrator on the audiobook, stellar. So great. And one of my last favorite books that I read in 2018 is called Faking It, The Lies Women Tell About Sex and the Truths They Reveal. But it's so good, guys. I read this one in like a day, and I was just drooling over how awesome and profound and well researched, and I just immediately I made my work and be like, we need to buy this book, and I put it as a staff recommendation, and now it's on the shelf, and I took a picture of it and sent it to the author, and I felt really great. That was really cool. But yes, this is another really awesome feminist women power book about sex, and it's really interesting, but it also talks about lying in general and how society has forced women to lie as a form of protection. It's good. Just read it. It's short. It's only like 250 pages. You can read it. You read that in a day. That was my reading year of 2018, and those were some of my favorite books that I read, along with some of my stats. I would love to know what some of your favorite books were that you read in 2018. I don't really care about what your least favorite books are. I've decided I don't really want to spread the negativity here in BookTube. I would rather spend my time talking about books that I love. And yeah, sure, I read some books in 2018 that I didn't like, but I don't want to rant about those. I'd rather rant and be excited and dance and love and shout and cheer for the books that I enjoyed. So I'm hoping I get some amazing ones in 2019 as well. And yeah, until next time, guys, bye. And then finally, my last favorite book that I read in 2018, it's 2018. What you see is what you get, people. That's my not motto. I don't even know. Anyway, we're gonna get started.